Hello everyone, this is Menz here. I'm going to be going over an upcoming Tier 8 French Premium Heavy Tank, the Somua SM here. Now, this tank hasn't been announced when they're going to release it. Most likely it will be sometime upcoming soon, especially given that we just got some new French heavy tanks. However, one thing to note about this tank is its crew setup. Before I dive into the comparison, it's pretty comparable to the AMX 5100 that's also at Tier 8. It only has 4 crew members here, so it will work with the AMX 50B line. However, it will not work with the new French heavy tank line. As you can see here, with 4 crew members, it won't work with the Tier 7 and Tier 6 heavies. It will not work with the BDR also. However, it will work with the AMX 5100, 5120, and 50B. That's because the Somua SM here was part of that AMX 50 project, but it won't work with the AMX 65T, the AMX M451, or the AMX M454. You'll need yourself one extra crew member to be able to use this tank essentially as a crew trainer. So let's preview the vehicle again. It resembles the AMX 50 series because it was part of it. Nothing too shocking here as far as how the tank looks, more or less. But getting into the comparisons, you will see that it is definitely different than the AMX 5100 that it shares Tier 8 heavy status with. So let's get into the comparison here. I'm only going to compare it against the AMX 5100 because this tank specifically, it's only going to be a crew trainer for the AMX 50 through the AMX 50B. And also, given that it's an autoloader, it doesn't really compare, say, against the AMX 65T, the AMX M449. It could compare against the Lorraine 40T. However, heavy to medium, there will be some differences between the two. Hey, little dog. So getting into things here, the Somua SM and the AMX 5100, they both use the same gun. So the top gun on the AMX 5100, 300 damage per shot, 232 millimeters a pen, and the same premium shells on them, getting up to 263 millimeters a pen. So nothing shocking as far as that. It's decent pen for a Tier 8 heavy. Premium rounds will help you deal with Tier 9s and 10s. Nothing to worry about there. Rate of fire is where you start seeing a difference here. It does have a higher rate of fire than the AMX 5100. Nearly 1 round per minute more, which, at first glance, you're like, holy crap, this is just flat out better than the AMX 5100. However, the turret traverse speed is much lower than the 5100. Gun depression is a little bit better with just 1 degree extra, so it will be better at fighting over hills. However, once you get to the magazine numbers here, so given the higher rate of fire, it reloads. This is with just 100% crew. As you can see, for both tanks, it'll be 100% crew, no equipment, no nothing. It reloads in 35.97 seconds compared to the AMX 5100 that is basically a little over 48 seconds. With that though, it does fire its rounds faster, 2.25 seconds between rounds compared to 2.73, but it only has 5 rounds in the magazine compared to 6. So you're doing 300-ish, depending on RNG, less damage per magazine in the Somua SM compared to the AMX 5100. Now, one thing to note, the aiming time is a little bit better as well, and also the accuracy is worse. So basically you have more DPM, less alpha strike, but you do fire your rounds faster, not only for having 1 less shell, but also in between rounds. And you also have negative 10 degrees of gun depression instead of 9. The on-the-move accuracy is also better on Somua SM, and also moving your turret and stuff, it's slightly better than the 5100. So even the 0.38 values, it's closer than it appears. Like the AMX 5100 has the better overall accuracy. However, the Somua SM has a better aiming time, better soft stats for accuracy, moving your turret, hull, stuff like that. And it does fire its rounds faster, so Honestly, I actually think the gun on the Somua SM is better. While the 5100 will have that extra shot, which could be the difference between clipping a tank and not, the much better DPM, so starting out at 2001 DPM on the Somua SM without any added equipment, you have a pretty good leg up over the 5100 in the DPM department, 266. So while the 5100 has the better strike capabilities, the Somua SM has the better well-rounded gun. So really, you know, the guns, I would say the Somua SM has the advantage here. The only thing it's gonna lack on is the turret traverse, having one less round per minute, or not one less round, one less round in the magazine, excuse me. And the dispersion's a little bit worse, but that's only going to come into effect at max range, which in both of these tanks, they're not exactly going to be sitting back sniping, honestly, because the bloom in between shooting shots and aiming time and stuff, it's not like you're going to be able to just sit there continually. It's kind of a, you know, flanking risk and reward tank. Moving down here, hit points. It does have 50 more hit points than the AMX 5100. Armor wise, pretty significant difference here. 140 millimeters on the front compared to 90 millimeters. Turret front 120 against 90 millimeters on the AMX 5100. Moving down to mobility, you're going to notice here there's some larger difference. So as you start getting into things here, just not even looking at the guns, because the Somua SM, you know, my opinion, the gun is better on it because it's more well-rounded and it has less faults compared to the AMX 5100 with that really massive reload time. You're definitely going to be struggling at times if you're caught off guard. So with both of these, like I personally would say the Somua SM, they're gearing it more towards being a slightly slower tank. As you can see here, the engine power is less than the 5100, specific power is less as well, with a little bit more armor, the more well-rounded gun, whereas the AMX 5100, more mobile, less armor, higher strike, but you have to kind of start push and pull from the front lines. But getting more into the mobility, again, specific power 12.5 on the Somua SM before any added equipment and whatnot, compared to 17 on the 5100. They have the same terrain resistant values, so really the mobility is lacking in a Somua SM. It's not like really sluggish for a heavy tank, but it is noticeably slower than the 5100 by a considerable margin. But it's still pretty decent for a heavy. Really, the 37 kilometers an hour top speed does hold it back a little bit, especially going down hills, compared to the 51 on the AMX 5100. Traverse speed is the same, where since they're pretty much the same tank, they do look slightly different as far as, you can just look up here before I get into comparison. The holes are slightly different, but basically the same tank design, you know, it's the same project. Concealment, AMX 5100 a little bit better, but really heavy tanks don't have that much camouflage regardless, and a little bit less V range. So looking at the stats here, the Somua SM has the better gun in my opinion. It's meant to fight a little bit closer up to the front lines than the AMX 5100. So really it's a matter of preference. Like, both tanks are very good. Let me get into the preview for this tank. Head to head, you know, it's a matter of, can the AMX 5100 potentially knock out the Somua SM, you know, with a clip, depending on how much HP each tank has, and will it be able to get out of, you know, kind of fighting head on against one while it has that longer reload. While the Somua SM, with one less round per magazine, it has that shorter reload, so it's able to stay closer up to the fight. Now, armor-wise, 5100 doesn't have any armor for a tier 8 heavy tank. The Somua SM, you know, since it does have that 140 millimeter upper glacis and the turret armor 120 for the value, the upper glacis sits at about 244 millimeters effective armor. So that will protect you against many, but not all, tier 8 standard rounds, because effective armor doesn't take into account normalization, which will make it a little bit weaker. but it will protect you against, say, like tier 8 medium standard rounds, heavy tanks sometimes, and TDs will be able to cut through you pretty decently. The lower glacis is still weak, 180 millimeters effective, so more or less on the hull. Whereas the AMX 5100 doesn't have very good hull armor. Most things can pen it. The Somua SM can bounce tier 6s, tier 7s, and some tier 8s. But once you start getting up against like tier 9s and 10s and some of the higher pen tier 8s, you're not really going to have even a chance on the upper glacis outside of a small one. You can angle it a little bit, but the side hull armor being at 90 millimeters, it's really, you can potentially angle it and keep your side armor at an auto bounce. However, you're still not going to be able to bounce some rounds. Really, you have to get it like in a perfect spot to be able to bounce things. The turret front, even though it is better than the AMX 5100, really the strengths of the frontal turret, it maxes out about 231 millimeters effective. Most of the strength is around the gun mantlet, and you know, these angled bits, even though they seem very strong, they sit at about 220 millimeters effective armor, and the front, even down here, is much weaker, about 130, 150. But once you get beneath the gun, it does get a little bit thinner here, around 200 millimeters effective, but it is kind of weak before it starts getting angled right in this area. And the Commander's cupola isn't that strong as well. It sits at about 115 millimeters effective right in the middle. Gets stronger as you go out. So tier 6s, tier 7s still will be able to penetrate the Somua SM, saying the cupola, possibly these little cheek areas here. Tier 7 and 8s, you know, the lower pen ones have a couple other options with the lower plate. Tier 6s might bounce off the lower plate, but 7s and 8s will be fine. You start, you know, if you factor in premium rounds, outside of the mantlet and the upper glacis, tier 8 and unders should be able to pen it pretty well. But once you start getting to higher tiers, you know, slightly side scraping just a hair, because this is only 90 millimeters thick on the side, it'll help a little bit for your upper plate, but tier 9 and 10 will still most likely be able to pen you. So really it's a matter of if you get lucky or not. Overall though, you know, comparing this tank specifically to the AMX 5100, since that's the tank it's closest to, and since it's going to be a crew trainer for AMX 5100, 120, and the 50B, it's a pretty damn good tank. Statistically, I like the gun much better on the Somua SM because it has less downfall compared to the AMX 5100 with the, you know, that basically the the reload time. So I like the more well-rounded gun. You know, it is a trade-off having that one less round per magazine, but the gun overall I think is better on the Somua SM. Armor's better. You know, you have slightly more HP too. However, you are much slower. You have a little bit less V range, a little bit less camouflage, but really the tanks are similar enough to where, me personally, I would pick the Somua SM over the AMX 50 in its current state. But overall, they both play off of each other enough to where they're similar, but slightly different, to where the Somua SM, you know, to me, you know, if it didn't have an autoloader, it would kind of resemble the newer French heavy line, more so than the 50B line, just because it actually has a little bit of armor to it. But you know, it is a good crew trainer for the AMX 5100 through the 50B, given it uses the same crew. It won't work with any other French heavies, whether it's lower tier ones or the new French heavy line. But overall, it is a very good tank. You know, whether or not we're going to see this soon, it depends on Wargaming. There potentially it might reach, say, the NA server at the end of January 2018 here. Otherwise, who knows, it might be a personal mission reward tank. I think that would be a mistake because, you know, a crew trainer for French heavy tanks, people, you know, you have the FCM 50T, but Wargaming, you know, is looking to do stuff about the preferential tanks. And, you know, that being one of them, I could see him replacing that with the Somua SM, since this is more reminiscent of the AMX 50B line than the FCM 50T. But anyway, hopefully you got a little bit out of this video. You know, we could see this soon. I have a feeling it could be the secondary January tank, but who really knows? League of Wargaming knows about that, but this will be a very good tank for those looking for a French heavy crew trainer. And as far as credits go, it should print credits because you don't need that many premium rounds, and since the gun is primarily the main focus on this, with armor being a secondary point, it should be able to print credits out, given that you'll be able to cause a lot of damage with it. But anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully you're enjoying looking forward to the Somua SM here. Thank you again for watching. Have a very nice day. See you around.